Hey guys, Ronin here, and welcome back to Plus Ultraman's channel. I know you're here to view the next part of GSA, but before we get started on that, if you haven't already, make sure to check out the season premiere of What If Giovanni Sponsored Ash for Season 2, and Part 2 of Season 2. Those will be linked in the iCard above. And don't forget to sub to us, because as of right now, 73.2% of you guys that watch his content is not subscribed. And over on my channel, 63.2% of you guys that watch my content is not subscribed. So if you could do us a favor, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you'll never miss another part of GSA or any of our other content. Without further ado, let's get into What If Giovanni Sponsored Ash Part 3. I hope you enjoy.
Watching and learning from the boss. After its long voyage around the Hoenn region, the SS St. Flower has at last returned to Vermilion City. En masse, passengers begin to disembark, rising to reunite with family and friends. However, one figure hangs back, clearly trying to delay his departure as long as possible. Perched on his shoulder is an all-too-familiar Scratch Cat, and when the deck they are standing on is vacant enough to avoid drawing attention, he leans in and asks his boss what's wrong. In a glum tone, Ash replies that he knows Giovanni or one of his goons will be waiting for him on land, and after the trouble they caused in Petalburg, he can't imagine they will receive a warm welcome. Patting his trainer's back, Meowth tells him not to sweat it, since things aren't the same as the last time he went up against the Team Rocket boss. For one, he has him watching his back for real now. Ash smiles a bit and nods that Meowth's right, before sighing that either way, it's not like delaying things will change the outcome anyway. He finally starts to head towards the gangplank, but is stopped when one of the sailors lays a hand on his chest, telling him to wait. Suspecting this man is an agent of Giovanni, Meowth pops his claws, but the sailor tells him to be calm, since he is not an enemy, and is merely borrowing this man's body so they can speak. The formal cadence in which the sailor says this gives Ash a pretty good idea of who he's really speaking with, and so smiling slightly, he asks Mewtwo how it's been. With a deep sigh, Mewtwo's mouthpiece replies that things have become difficult since Ash has been away, and he wishes he could explain in person, but for Ash's own safety, he has decided to keep his distance. Panicking in his voice, Ash asks if Giovanni's managed to track him down, but the vessel shakes his head, saying the source of his problems for once is not the Rocket Boss, but instead Lance the Champion. It seems the Dragon Master has made public the events of New Island, or at least his perception of them, positioning himself as the lone hero strong enough to slay the monster that was him. Ardently, Ash reminds that Mewtwo is not a monster, and the sailor smiles that he knows that now, thanks to Ash, Annabelle, and all their Pokemon friends. But he's afraid what he knows means little compared to the views of the entire region and the wider world. For that reason, both it and Annabelle have decided it's best for it to leave the Battle Tower, and all of Kanto for that matter, in search of a place where it can be safe and free. Ash, after a tense pause, nods stoically, saying he will miss him, but if this is what Mewtwo needs, he'll support him as a friend all the way. However, part of him is reluctantly thankful to continue having space between him and his friend, who still poses a threat to him as his would-be shock collar or execution device controlled by Giovanni. This makes Mewtwo's vessel smile again, and laying a hand on Ash's shoulder, he tells the boy that this feeling is of course mutual, and should he ever require his help, he need only reach out through their psychic bond, and he will be at Ash's side in an instant. He then has the sailor gesture with his other hand to a tall skyscraper in the distance. Standing on the roof is a figure hidden beneath a brown cloak, and as Ash looks at it, the figure shoots him a three-fingered thumbs up, before flying up into the sky and vanishing among the clouds. As Mewtwo departs, the glassiness in the sailor's eyes fades, and he blinks, clutching his head and asking Ash what he's doing here. Having gotten good at feigning innocence, Ash shrugs, claiming that he doesn't know, and the sailor just approached him. Rubbing his head, the sailor mutters that he must have had too much to drink last night before stumbling away. As Ash finally descends down the gangplank, a small smile on his face and the knowledge that Mewtwo is out of Giovanni's clutches for now. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for Ash, as waiting at the dock is Mittori, Giovanni's secretary, who curtly scolds him for taking his sweet time getting off the ship, and telling him to hurry since Giovanni wants to see him.
Coyly, Ash replies that he was just helping Meowth, who was feeling a bit seasick, and to verify this, Meowth pretends to gag, causing the glasses-clad Rocket to recoil in disgust. She then directs Ash and Meowth to a nearby limousine, which will take them to a nearby safe house. Ash gives no objections, staying silent for the duration of the drive and the subsequent walk through the building. To call this place a safe house would be misleading, as Ash quickly finds that it is in fact a lighthouse not far from the port. Heading up the winding stairs, Mittori shows Ash the main attraction of this place. A large video screen which projects the imposing face of Giovanni at 100 times its visual size. Ash braces himself for the rebuke, but instead, the Team Rocket boss grins that he hopes his disciple had a relaxing trip and is ready to get back to work. Ash refuses to give Giovanni the satisfaction of playing along with this sick game, and instead asks if his mother and friends are safe, to which the man leers that they most certainly are, and shall remain so for as long as Ash does what he is told. Speaking of which, next time Ash disobeys him, he won't be so lenient as to send weaklings like Team Aqua or Team Magma after him. Ash coolly replies he doesn't consider putting a hit out on him leniency, but Giovanni retorts that he knew Ash could beat them with ease, just as he knows that the boy works best when backed into a corner, just like him. Ash feels sick at being likened to Giovanni, mostly because he noticed a growing trend of that, but says nothing. And so, to fill the silence, Boss Rocket continues, telling his protege that he wants all of that to be water under the bridge, with the question now being whether Ash wants the same. Ash considers saying what he wants doesn't matter when the mobster is holding all the cards, but he is smart enough to know that petulance will earn him nothing except further punishment. Instead, he meets Giovanni's projected eyes, and in a voice strengthened by determination, asks when they will get to work. This makes Giovanni smile, his lipless smile, and in a tone of smug satisfaction, he instructs Ash to meet up with him in Celadon City. He has no doubt that Charizard or Fearow can carry him there post-haste, so he expects to see him in person by day's end. He then cuts off the transmission, leaving Ash, Meowth, and Matori shrouded in darkness. Clearly irritated by not being acknowledged, Matori snaps at Ash to get going already, and having no desire to hang around this unpleasant woman for a second longer than he has to, Ash complies. At Fearow's new top speed, it takes a little over an hour for him to make the journey that would have required days or even weeks by land, and by the time the sky has started to turn orange, Ash and his Pokemon are touching down on the soft grass of Celadon City's largest park. A voice from behind Ash then asks why he chose here of all places to land, and with a shiver creeping all the way down his spine, Ash looks back to see Giovanni in the flesh, sitting comfortably on a park bench, a newspaper in his hands. It seems that the Rocket Boss does not want an answer, however, as he continues speaking almost at once, grinning that it's where he would have chosen, so this is not a rebuke. If anything, it's merely confirmation of something he had already knew, how very alike they are. Ash's response is naturally one of disgust, but Giovanni ignores this, instead placidly asking Ash if he has had a chance to catch up on the news as of late, before tossing him the newspaper. Catching it, Ash immediately sees what Giovanni is getting at, as the front page is devoted to a full spread of Lance, while the headline proudly declares that the champ has agreed to star in a film adaptation of his victory over the menace Mewtwo.
Scoffing, Giovanni coyly asks if Ash thinks the movie will include the part where Lance ordered Moltres, Articuno, and Zapdos to attack a wounded Pokemon and an unarmed child, before suggesting that he imagines Ash must not be feeling particularly fond of the Dragon Master or the legendary birds at this point. Thankfully, he will soon provide Ash with a way to get even with all of them, though in his experience such matters are best discussed in private. He then gestures for Ash to follow him, and as he rises from his bench, Ash falls into step, while staying just outside the crime boss's reach. Giovanni notes this minor slight, but allows and even praises it as a wise decision, as he guides Ash to the Celadon game corner of all places. The casino is a cacophony of lights and sounds when Ash enters, but his sponsor pays this no mind, instead laying his hand on a seemingly innocuous poster, then leading him to a back room where a set of stairs begins to fold out. Hesitantly following Giovanni down the stairs, Ash is surprised to find himself in a tunnel network that expands out as far as he can see, with the Rocket Boss explaining that since the events of New Island, the Viridian Gym has become unsuitable as a base, forcing him to make this place the new command center for Team Rocket for a while. And though it lacks the creature comforts of the gym, it has no shortcomings in terms of technology and amenities, meaning that it will be more than sufficient for the next stage of Ash's mission and training.
Seeing the unspoken question in Ash's eyes at this, Giovanni smiles that he intends for the boy to take a more active role in Team Rocket's business moving forward, such as assisting Viper in the training of their new recruits for the upcoming missions, and accompanying him to planning meetings with the admins. He does of course also expect Ash to finish up his gym challenge, but between battles, he wants the boy here, so he can supervise his growth and take a more direct hand as his mentor moving forward. Giovanni then lays an unwelcome hand on Ash's shoulder, telling him that Ash is not entirely to blame for his past misbehavior. As his mentor, Giovanni tried to give him free range like his mother did before him, but upon reflection, he has realized that at least during this stage of his development, that is not what Ash requires. Instead, he will keep him close and guide him so that together they can build a glorious future, not only for Ash, but for Team Rocket. And to Ash's surprise, he believes Giovanni. Not the glorious part, but Giovanni does actually mean what he's saying. Before, there was always a wall of duplicity between them. Not that he could outright tell that through the distance was easy enough to sense, but with everything now in the open, it seems though Giovanni truly does wish to raise Ash as his heir. Good. If this is what that monster wants, he'll give it to him, playing the part of a loyal protege until he is lulled in a false sense of security. Then, when his guard is down, he will put a stop to Giovanni's wicked ways, permanently. Giovanni then turns his attention to Meowth, a cool indifference in his voice, and tells him that he has not forgotten about the Scratch Cat's betrayal, and for it has decided that Meowth is no longer welcome as an operative of Team Rocket. Coldly, Meowth snarks that this would really hurt if he hadn't already ditched this bad joke of a gang back on New Island, but Giovanni tuts that he doesn't think Meowth understands. The only thing that kept Dr. Namba and Professor Sebastian from dissecting him to figure out how he could talk was the boss's protection. Now without it, he had best stay very close to his trainer for his own safety, especially with Persian raring for her shot at revenge.
Cackling a little at Meowth's look of worry, Giovanni hands Ash a keycard, instructing him to go rest in his new quarters, since in a few hours he'll be expected to start his work with Viper. Glad to have any excuse to be rid of Giovanni, Ash obeys, heading to a nearby elevator and riding it down to the housing level. When they are alone, Ash reassures Meowth that he won't let anything happen to him, but the cat seems too lost in his own thoughts to really notice, deepening the young man's feeling of isolation as they descend deeper into the subterranean base. Finally, they reach Ash's quarters, and to his surprise, they are quite lavish, with all the basic amenities plus a large bed, widescreen TV, a kitchenette, and even a small incubation chamber for his egg. After what he'd done, Ash had expected a metal bunk underneath the leaky septic tank, but he is not going to look a gift ponyta in the mouth, especially if Giovanni thinks he can win back his loyalty with gifts such as this or his hoeing trip. However, there is one thing that displeases Ash, a bundle resting on his bed with a handwritten note from his sponsor, instructing him to wear this while he is here at the base. It is a standard Team Rocket grunt uniform, perfectly tailored for him, which Ash briefly considers throwing in the trash. But he quickly stops himself, reasoning for the sake of his loved ones, he'll have to play nice with a man he has come to hate more than any other. Despite his bodily fatigue, Ash cannot sleep a wink in the stronghold of the enemy, and so it is with shadows under his eyes that he makes his way to the training area a few hours later. Viper is there waiting for him, and when he sees Ash in the Team Rocket uniform, he nods approvingly, saying he's glad to see the boy back on the winning team. However, Ash's response is far less jovial, remembering this man is the one who manhandled him and his friends on their way to New Island, and threw them into that cell Meowth nearly killed himself getting them out of. Tactfully, he asks what they want him to do here, and Viper, recognizing that Ash has no desire to be friends, growls that the boss wants him to use those powerful Pokemon of his to whip these recruits into shape. He then instructs a group of fledgling Rockets to step up and assume the position.
Moving with militaristic precision, 5 young men and women approach Ash in a line and on Viper's call, bring out their Pokemon. Ash isn't that worried, since these grunts are mostly armed with Rattata, Zubat, and Coughing, and so brings out Crocodile in response. The Desert Croc roars in anticipation, and the grunts quail at the sight of it, but Ash feels no pity for them, barely waiting long enough for Viper to tell him to start the battle before having to start a lay into them. It takes a single swipe of Crocodile's mighty claws to down one of the Coughing and activate a stage 1 Moxie boost, before Ash has it turn its attention to the second. However, this leaves the Desert Croc's back exposed, and so one of the grunts with Zubats have their Pokemon pepper it with super effective leech lives. Skin-piercing needles bury themselves into the ground Dark type's back, and it groans in irritation, as the grunts leer that they knew that this kid couldn't be all that, but this proves to be a premature reaction, as when Ash ignores them and tells his starter to stay strong, it straightens up, pulling the needles from its back and returns them to the Zubat with more than double the force. With a squawk, the pair of Zubats are pinned to the wall by their own leech lives, and Crocodile does not hesitate to capitalize on this weakness, knocking them both out with a single Stone Edge that rocks the room and causes more power to surge through the Croc.
Just like that, 3/5 of the Rocket fighting force is down, with the final two looking truly terrified. But knowing that standing around will get them nothing, the gutsier of the pair orders her Rattata to rush Crocodile with Hyper Fang. The purple rat chitters its understanding as its fangs glow and extend before leaping at Crocodile's tail. However, as the Team Rocket trainees will soon learn, every part of Ash's starter is a deadly weapon, as with a simple flick of that massive tail, Crocodile shatters Rattata's fangs and sends it careening into the wall beside the Zubat. Moments later, the final Coughing falls to a Thunder Fang, and the so-called battle is brought to an end as Crocodile asserts his dominance with a final roar. From the sidelines, Viper calls these trainees pathetic, and perfectly dissects exactly where they messed up, somewhat shocking Ash at how much knowledge he has in raid battling, before barking at them to hit the showers, while instructing the next group to step up and see if they can do any better against the future boss. This quickly becomes the way of things, with Ash spending several hours each night brutalizing the grunts and their Pokemon. When he is not assisting Viper, he is often assigned to shadow one of the executives, though this mostly consists of running errands for them. Petrol in particular delights in giving Ash difficult tasks that are set up for him to fail, while Proton, as the youngest executive, actually seems to like Ash, frequently roping him in as his wingman in hijinks which only make the boy miss his friends more. It's truly a monotonous existence, where time itself lacks all meaning this deep underground, and more than once, Ash wonders if this is all designed to break his will. But this thought gives him strength, as for no other reason than spite, he refuses to give Giovanni the satisfaction.
Speaking of the boss Rocket, he has been more mysteriously absent despite his promise of a closer bond between Ash and himself, and it is therefore something of a shock when at the end of the young man's first week at base, he finds Giovanni waiting for him in his quarters. Instinctively, Ash tenses up, but Giovanni just smiles, paternally instructing him to come sit with him on the bed. Grimly, Ash complies, with Giovanni telling him that today, Ash will be filling in for Archer, who is still doing his duty for Team Rocket in prison. Ash asks what capacity he will be replacing Archer in, and Giovanni responds that he is having a strategy meeting for an upcoming mission which he wants Ash to lead, so it's only natural he contributes to the planning. Leaving no room for objection, Giovanni then departs the room, with Ash and Meowth reluctantly following. Before long, they find themselves in a large boardroom with Giovanni seated at the head of the table. Proton, Petrol, and Matari are there along with Butch and Cassidy from the SSN, while Ariana, Jesse, James, and a man Ash doesn't know with long dark hair are appearing via video, with a few other blank video feeds. Excitedly, James greets Meowth when he sees him, but Meowth is somewhat subdued in his greeting, having been this way since their last encounter with Giovanni. Ash takes his seat at Giovanni's right hand, and when they are all in place, the boss gestures for silence. He then brings up a trio of images, showing each one of the legendary birds along with their keepers, Surge, Noland, and Blaine. In a voice of measured dissatisfaction, Giovanni announces that after the new island incident, each of them have gone into hiding. However, it will not be long before they are found. In the meantime, they had best prepare a strategy to acquire the birds, as well as the traitors Blaine and Surge.
Petrol contemptuously suggests they just send Giovanni's Wonder Boy protege to recapture them, his glare squarely on Ash. But Ariana scolds that if it were that simple, they wouldn't need a planning meeting, would they? But Tori then icily retorts that the boss has expressed a desire for Ash to lead this operation, so Ariana too should learn to hold her tongue until she has all the information, in a tone that makes it clear that the two women have a history of animosity. Ariana bristles at this and prepares to fire back a barb of her own, but in a tone of command reminiscent of Giovanni, the long-haired man silences both women, rebuking them for letting their petty prides get in the way of their duty to Team Rocket. Ariana glares at the young man while Matoya looks offended, bordering on hurt, but neither says a word, allowing the topic to return to the capture of the legendary birds. A few more ideas are tossed around, such as setting a trap for the humans in the hopes of drawing out the birds, or as unlikely as it is, recruiting Sabrina to make use of her clairvoyance to find them. But nothing seems to please or impress Giovanni, who sits stony-faced throughout the entire discussion. The only sign that he's paying attention being the flicking of his soulless Sharpedo-like eyes to stare intently at each speaker. Finally, when each of the executives and admins have said their piece, the boss clears his throat, asking Ash if he has anything to contribute. Curtly, Ash just says nope, but the former gym leader chuckles that surely that can't be true. After all, Meowth told him that the boy is so good at coming up with clever strategies in battle, so it stands to reason that he should be able to come up with a better plan than the directive the boy's colleagues have offered him. On his shoulder, Meowth hangs his head at being reminded of his previous treachery, but Ash doesn't notice, too lost in his own conundrum. On one hand, if he gives Giovanni a bad plan on purpose, he'll more than likely know and use this as an excuse to punish one of his friends. But if he gives him a good plan, it might wind up helping Team Rocket further their goals and endanger the legendary birds and their guardians. As if he can see the turmoil in Ash's mind better than even Mewtwo could, the mobster smirks and in a calmly menacing voice asks, "Well?" Sighing internally, Ash says that if it were him, he'd stop trying to capture all three birds at once, since it splits focus. Like in his battle with Koga when he had 3 opponents, he stuck to one target at a time, and this allowed him to consider its individual strengths and weaknesses so he could overcome them. This trinity together, however, were able to overcome Mewtwo himself, which is a testament to their power. Considering this, Giovanni nods approvingly, grinning that he knew Ash would be of use. He then looks at each of his higher-ups, smugly asking if they now see why he brought this boy in. With varying levels of begrudging acceptance, each of the Rockets nod, and Giovanni smirks that he is glad, since one day they will all be working for him. No one is happy about this, though it is clear that Matori and Ariana are the most upset by this news, going so far as to outright question what about Silver and another name who is lost in the cacophony. This time, the long-haired man does not stop them, instead simply scowling and cutting off communications, while Petrol glowers at Ash as if this is somehow his fault. Seeing that things are getting out of hand, Giovanni calls for silence. However, he does so in a whisper rather than a yell, and even Ash can tell that this is the far more menacing of the options. At once, the boardroom falls quiet, and still in that low hiss, Giovanni tells his subordinates that they have once more demonstrated why none of them is fit to succeed him, before ordering them all to leave. Ash happily proceeds to rise to his feet, but Giovanni stops him, telling him alone to stay. Reluctantly, the boy complies, and so soon, it is just the two of them and Meowth.
In an almost tired voice, as he visibly relaxes a bit, Giovanni asks Ash if he now understands why he brought himself, Richie, and Silver to one day take over Team Rocket, and Ash admits that he does. Half of the higher-ups lack the mind to lead, and the other half are too blinded by their own lust of power to actually take the steps necessary to achieve it. Giovanni nods, calling this analysis spot on, and smiling that this is why he in particular is the one who will one day run the organization. Ash coldly states that what he just said is plain to see, and Silver, Richie, and even Gary could have pointed it out just as easily. Giovanni muses that perhaps this is true, but each of those three also possess a defect that make them just as unfit of leadership as his existing elites. Richie, while brilliant, is too soft-hearted for his own good, while Silver is ambitious but short-sighted. As for the Oak Boy, he may be qualified, but recruiting him would be more trouble than it's worth when Ash is an option. This causes Ash to pause, and he asks a question he never really considered. Why did Giovanni really choose to recruit him? This makes the dark-haired man genuinely smile, and he replies that he knew he wanted him as a disciple the moment he stood up to his Rhyhorn. In that moment, Ash showed himself as someone with drive that could do what had to be done, the courage to face the unknown, and the strength of will to dominate the weak. All traits a boss must have. Ash protests that he doesn't dominate anyone. He earns loyalty through trust. But Giovanni just disappointingly leers that for all his promise, Ash still has a long way to go. In any relationship, there are masters and servants. The manner in which that dynamic is established is irrelevant, and in each of Ash's relationships, he is the one being served. His Pokémon serve him through the way they fight so diligently for him. His friends serve him, as demonstrated by how they rushed headlong into danger back on New Island to save him. And even the grunt trainees have begun to accept him as their superior. Like it or not, he is a figure that his inferiors flock to, and once he stops pretending that they are his equals, he will be able to put them to even greater use. Not liking the sound of this, Ash asks what happens when two masters come into each other's orbit, and Giovanni, seeing the real question behind this pretense, casually replies that the weaker one yields and serves the other, or is destroyed. It is not a pleasant answer, but it's the truth, and it's high time Ash started facing some unpleasant truths, such as this, since like he said back on the helicopter, Ash's training will not be complete until he learns to let go of that which holds him back. Ash has nothing to say to this, his stomach twisting a little at the thought of Giovanni's sick worldview. And seeing this, the boss Rocket dismisses him, though not before urging him to think about what he has said, since when Ash is ready, he will teach him how to properly wield his power. This stops Ash in his tracks, and for the first time since arriving on the base, he actually feels his confidence return to him, as he suddenly spins around and surprises Giovanni by asking, "How about tomorrow then?" causing the boss Rocket to give a quizzical look, along with Meowth, as Ash smirks and reasserts that if Giovanni knows so much about power and wants to show him how to use it, then it's high time he put his money where his mouth is, somewhat blindly accusing the man of doing everything in his power to run from a fight against him since the day he gave him Sandile.
At this, Giovanni matches his smirk and corrects that he wasn't running so much as delaying. It wouldn't have done him much good if he'd smeared Ash and his little lizard across the floor like Caterpie on their first day. But to this verbal jab, Meowth is the one who replies, snarking that Giovanni isn't answering the boss's questions and causing the older man's lip to twitch in a small showing of displeasure at someone already addressing his protege as such. His expression returns to a stony one as he scoffs and agrees it's high time Ash faced him and allowed him to test how much he's grown fundamentally firsthand, since seeing the levels of his Pokemon on a screen is nothing compared to a true showing of strength. However, this hard lesson will begin even before the battle, as Giovanni will demonstrate how important it is to use all available resources to their fullest. Meowth then goes to Boss Rocket to stop speaking gibberish, and with cold contempt, Giovanni simplifies, revealing that his condition for battling is that he may choose the number of Pokemon they use, and both of their teams. Meowth then hisses to his boss not to take that deal, since it's clearly a trap, but the son of Delia loses none of his bravado, and quickly agrees to these terms, smirking that all his teammates are more than capable of taking on Giovanni, causing the boss Rocket to cackle that this will also serve as an object lesson in the dangers of hubris, and instructing Ash to rest, since he will need it for the morning. Ash and Meowth say nothing as they depart the boardroom, heading down to their quarters. When they are alone, Meowth questions Ash if he's got a screw loose, taking such obvious bait, saying that he meant it when he said any of his Pokemon could win this battle, but that's not why he agreed. Cocking his head, the Scratch Cat asks what is, and Ash grins mischievously as he says he's taking a page out of Silver's book and using misdirection. While Giovanni is focused on him, it means he's not scheming of new ways to hurt his friends. Speaking of whom, he should probably warn Annabelle about Team Rocket's plans to recapture Articuno, Moltres, and Zapdos.
Reaching out through a psychic bond with Mewtwo, Ash asks if the clone can put him through to the purple-haired Frontier Brain. Having become well attuned to her psychic frequency during the time they spent at the battle tower, this is a trifling feat for Mewtwo. And so moments later, Ash hears the voice of Annabelle in his head. Nervously, she asks if Ash is alright, and when he replies that he is, relief floods to the connection as Annabelle next asks where he is, adding that Mewtwo didn't mention it. Ash explains his current situation, causing Annabelle to transmit a wave of tension, but nonetheless, she listens intently. When Ash is done, Annabelle offers to teleport him off the rocket base, but Ash declines, smiling that he thinks he can do more good here. Case in point, he knows what Team Rocket is planning for the legendary birds, and so would like to warn Blaine and the others. Annabelle muses this is easier said than done, as Blaine, Nolan, and Surge have cut all communications and gone on the lam, consistently changing hiding places. Worried, Ash asks if that means she doesn't know where they are, but Annabelle psychically smiles that she never said that. In fact, right now, Nolan is with a colleague of hers and Ash's friend Richie, so if Ash wants, she could patch him through, and he could talk to Richie and Nolan directly. A deep sadness emanates from Ash at this offer, so powerful that Annabelle almost falls to her knees in a secondhand despair, and with a deep sigh, Ash declines, telling Annabelle that he's not ready to see his friends just yet, not until he sets things right, though if she would keep an eye on them for him, he would be immensely grateful. With a hint of her usual chipperness, Annabelle replies that she has been. Richie, Gary, Silver, and Brock are all doing well with their respective mentors, while Misty has continued her gym challenge. Ash thanks her, though in truth, the person he really wants to know about is his mother. Now it's Annabelle's turn to emanate sadness, as she admits that after what Ash told her following the fateful phone call, she's been trying to help Delia's consciousness reassert itself, but whatever Pokemon Giovanni's used to cast hypnosis on her is incredibly powerful, since even her best efforts have yielded no results. It's like she's not even her anymore.
Angry tears run down Ash's face as he suddenly punches a wall in frustration, startling Meowth and Annabelle alike. In a low, hate-filled voice, Ash declares that he will never forgive Giovanni for what he did to his mother, before asking Annabelle if she can at least tell him where she is. Annabelle replies that she's currently in an area south of Cerulean City, somewhere near Route 5. Urgently, Ash pleads for more details, but Annabelle sighs that she's sorry, but that's all she knows. Whatever psychic block Giovanni has put in Delia's brain is also in effect surrounding this place, suggesting that Giovanni really doesn't want anyone to know about it. Ash sighs and thanks her nonetheless, then feeling the effort of maintaining the psychic connection beginning to weigh on him as a novice Esper, he promises to contact her soon, before asking Mewtwo to sever the link. As his room comes back into focus, Ash only now realizes just how exhausted he is, while Meowth, who had been privy to none of the conversation with Annabelle, concernedly asks if the boss is alright. Taking a deep and calming breath, Ash says he's fine, though now he has yet another reason he has to win tomorrow, as he gently picks up his cat and curls up in bed to rest, lulled to sleep by Meowth's purring. The next morning, Ash is awoken by Proton, who provides him with a fresh rocket uniform and tells him to begin the training area in 10 minutes for his battle with the boss. Though still a bit sleepy, Ash responds with his usual curt nod, and so the youngest exec prepares to leave, but before he goes, he wishes Ash luck, admitting that he'll be cheering for him. 10 minutes later, Ash finds himself in the training area, and to his surprise, Giovanni is not the only person waiting for him. It seems as though everyone stationed here is coming to watch this match, giving Ash a true and frightening understanding of just how large Giovanni's organization is even after its major losses on the SSN and New Island. Seeing Ash eyeing the crowd, Giovanni chuckles that he thought battling in front of an audience would be good practice for the Pokemon League. Which, for Ash's information and benefit, he has pulled some strings to have delayed a bit in the wake of the events of New Island. Ash says nothing to either claim, instead looking back at Giovanni and asking if he's decided on the terms of this battle yet. His mentor nods that he has. 3v3. Both parties will be allowed substitutions, and Ash's first Pokemon is to beat Meowth.
The Scratch Cat looks a little surprised by this, but everything becomes clear when Giovanni sends out his first Pokemon, Persian. A cruel grin then stretches across Meowth's face as he sneers that he's been wanting payback for New Island. Persian hisses something that even without translation, Ash knows to mean the feeling's mutual, and just like that, the battle lines are drawn. Leaping from Ash's shoulder, Meowth wastes no time extending his claws. However, as a testament of his loyalty, he awaits his boss's orders before attacking. Ash, knowing how much a win here will mean to Meowth, weighs his options carefully. If he were battling anyone else, he'd assume they'd pick this match merely based on evolutions having more power. But Giovanni would never build a strategy around something so surface level. No, there's a much bigger plan at play here. For this reason, Ash starts out cautiously, having Meowth open with a growl in hopes of lessening the damage of whatever Giovanni's got in store. Meowth gives his trainer a look of confusion at this order, but carries it out all the same, snarling that Persian is fat, old, and mangy, though obviously Persian could care less of what Meowth thinks of it and responds so by stretching and yawning, causing many of the assembled grunts to laugh at Meowth. This only angers the feisty Pokemon, who pleads with Ash to let him at him, but Ash refuses this, calling for Swift instead. This definitely feels wrong to Meowth, but he shoots his stars anyway, mollified by at least the fact that now he's dealing some damage to Persian.
Or so Meowth thinks, as Giovanni is not one to just take undesirable outcomes. Instead, he has Persian use Feint, causing the cat to vanish in a blur of motion before reappearing behind Meowth. Whipping out a paw, Persian then knocks its pre-evolution into the path of the homing stars, causing him to quite literally blow up in his face. As Meowth stumbles forward and coughs out a mouthful of smoke, Giovanni admonishes Ash, telling him that this is what he means by using every asset at his disposal. Ash, however, is barely listening, instead calling out to Meowth and asking if he's alright. Shaking off the damage, Meowth says he's fine, though he won't be for long if Ash doesn't get over whatever's going on in his head. He's not fighting like himself, and because of it, Giovanni's walking all over them. Heart sinking, Ash knows his friend is right, but tries to explain that he doesn't want to send Meowth into another one of Giovanni's traps, and definitely doesn't want to repeat of their last encounter with that sadistic Persian. But the Scratch Cat retorts that maybe he already has. Maybe the trap is getting Ash so convinced that he has some scheme up his sleeve that the kid can't think straight. And even if he's wrong and there really is some master plan, Meowth doesn't care. He already told Ash that he's his boss, and that means he'll fight for him no matter what. He just needs to know that Ash is watching his back rather than worrying about nothing. Seeing the logic in his friend's thought process and taking a deep breath, Ash apologizes, thanking Meowth for pulling him out of his funk and telling him to rush right in to use Slash. Meowth grins that that's more like it, and so launches himself at Persian, who meets his claws with their own, creating a deadlock.
Now face to face, Persian screeches in Meowth's ears, making the Scratch Cat recoil in spite of himself and giving Persian an opening to pounce on him. However, Meowth is not the same despondent creature that he once was on New Island, and so, with both his and Ash's pride on the line, he forces himself to recover, ducking under Persian's lunge and raking his claws along her underbelly. The classy cat Pokemon yowls in pain as it skids to a stop, and even shows a hint of reluctance when Giovanni orders it to go after Meowth again. From his side of the field, Meowth mockingly asks Persian what's wrong, calling her a scaredy cat, and taunting that it's not so easy when the other guy actually fights back. This stokes Persian's ire, and so with an enraged hiss, it barrels towards Meowth, dark aura coating it. It seems this aura is not merely cosmetic, as before Meowth can move, Persian is on top of him, whipping out a paw and slamming it into the ground with enough force to leave a crater. Ash cries out as Pseudo starters name, while Persian pads back over to Giovanni, earning a scratch behind its ears for its cruelty. As Meowth gets to his feet, the boss rocket explains that what they just witnessed was a move called Lash Out, which is exponentially more powerful when the user has been weakened in some way, such as being the subject of Meowth's growl from the start of the battle, so he supposes he ought to thank Ash for that. Scowling, Meowth snarls that they both can thank him by dropping dead, but Giovanni chuckles that he and Persian shan't be doing that, though it looks as if Meowth is about to. Despite not wanting to agree with Giovanni, Ash has to admit Meowth looks worse for wear after that attack, and so asks if he wants to tag out. Without hesitation, Meowth shakes his head, saying he's in this to the bitter end, and so Ash smiles, telling Meowth if that's the case, then we'll win together. Giovanni cackles that this impotent overconfidence of youth is always amusing to see, but no matter, he'll soon teach Ash the error of his ways.
He then has Persian retake the field, with a sadistic smirk calls for it to use Lash Out again to end things. Once more, that dark aura surrounds Persian and it dashes in with enhanced speed. However, this time, Ash and Meowth know what to expect, and so dodging the swiping paw, Meowth is able to move in close and deliver a neck chop similar to the one he used on Ash and friends at the Viridian Gym. Unfortunately, the lack of surprise prevents this from being a knockout blow, but it does knock Persian off its feet, creating an opening for a cheap shot. As Meowth kicks it in the snout, Giovanni orders it to retreat. Scrambling back to his feet, Persian lopes back over to Giovanni, who tells it that they cannot afford to underestimate Ash or that wretched Meowth any longer. And for that reason, it is time to pull out the big guns with their sure kill technique. Persian hisses her disgust at the idea, refusing outright, but Giovanni will brook no argument, and with a silent glare compels her to do as told for her own good. This sufficiently cows the cat, and so with great disdain, Persian manifests a ring of ethereal hearts which fire at Meowth for a very surprising attract. Ash warns the Scratch Cat to look out, but it is already too late, as the hearts have already ensnared Meowth. Spinning once, then bursting as love hearts replace the feline's eyes. Smirking, Giovanni tells Persian to use this time to power up its next attack with Hone Claws, and the predator dutifully begins raking her claws across the ground to sharpen them as her eyes narrow. As she does this, Ash pleads with his partner to attack, but Meowth protests that he couldn't possibly harm something so purdy. Soon, Persian is done, and as her claws glow almost blindingly bright even under the lights of the training room, she leaps forward for what may well be a match or even life-ending move. Desperately, Ash makes one last call to his partner to snap out of it, feeling only a bit of hope when Meowth at least raises his own paws as if to attack. But alas, it is too little too late, as Persian creates a crisscross of slashes across Meowth's arms, before spinning with all her momentum and batting him away with her tail. As Meowth comes to a skidding stop, the hearts in his eyes burst for a moment, and with disgust in his tone, the Scratch Cat asks if he really just fell in love with that mangy old Persian. Ash nods in secondhand embarrassment that he's afraid that he did, and Meowth groans that he's never going to be able to live that down. His trainer, however, disagrees, telling him that it isn't his fault, and he can redeem himself right now by getting back in the fight. But as he says this, Persian once again abuses her speed, lunging forward once more, clearly perturbed this battle has gone this far, and preparing a Night Slash to finish things since the first one didn't. But now being focused, this big leap by Persian gives Meowth just the opening he needs to jump aside, slashing once more at Persian's already wounded belly. However, before this can make contact, something glints in Persian's eyes, and it turns just in the right angle to avoid the blow, while also sticking out its tail like a hook to drive a lariat into Meowth's throat. As Meowth crashes to his back, Giovanni informs a bewildered-looking Ash that Persian just used Detect, a move which will protect her from anything his pitiful kitten can use. Gloating that this whole battle so far has been a test, and it seems both Ash and Meowth have failed, so now it's time to put both of them out of their misery.
Giovanni then calls for his last attack, and at once an aura filled with heart-shaped sparkles bursts to life around Persian as it leaps high into the air. For a moment, its shadow hangs over the prone Meowth. Then, with a triumphant yowl, it dives. The impact fueled by the bond of Boss Rocket and his predatory partner rocks the training room, with a cloud of dust rising up to obscure both Meowth and Persian, while Ash calls out his friend's name, pleading for any sign that he is alright, but sadly receiving nothing in return. Across from him, Giovanni chides that this will have to be another lesson. Growing too attached to one's Pokemon clouds a trainer's judgment. If one is too worried about breaking a tool, they will never utilize it to its fullest. For example, if Ash ignored Meowth's protest towards evolution, he would have at least been on equal footing with his mentor. Just because it pleases one's subordinates doesn't mean that a choice is an optimal one. A snarky voice then bursts from the cloud, sneering that's where Giovanni's wrong and what he never understood. Sure, caring about a Pokemon means sometimes you'll stop them from using 100% for their own good, but in return for that care, there will be times where they pay you back going 110%, and when that happens, nothing can stop you.
With this enigmatic claim, the dust finally clears to reveal Meowth, holding Persian aloft, his claws buried into the same part of her underbelly he had previously injured. With a strange smirk as he holds her unconscious weight, the Scratch Cat gloats that he knew Persian couldn't use Detect at the same time as her other moves, so he used this as a chance to strike back. Ash angrily protests that Meowth shouldn't have put himself in danger like that, since if he'd missed, he would have taken some serious damage. But snickering, Meowth tells the kid to stop worrying. He's not the same weakling he was when they met, and besides, he never let his boss down by losing. Cackling harder at his own genius, Meowth flings Persian off his claws, and then staggers to his feet so he can deliver a savage kick to her gut, saying that was for New Island. Furiously, Giovanni recalls his favorite pet to her ball, and hands it off as he orders a grunt to get her to her treatment bay immediately. But as he does, Meowth taunts the mobster, telling him that as he said, he's nothing compared to Ash, as he's raring for his next opponent. Though perhaps fortunately, Meowth's stamina finally gives out before he can say something that will really get him into trouble. And with a deep sigh, he collapses to the ground, groaning that he needs a vacation. Chuckling, Ash replies they just had one of those, remember? But he can't offer him a break, urging him to come back and be his second set of fights for the last two battles. Smiling in turn, Meowth thanks his trainer, and then clambers back onto his favorite perch as Giovanni pulls out his second ball. His face very clearly saying that though Ash has won the first battle, he still has many plans in store to claim ultimate victory. Well, that's all we have for part 3 of season 2. But before we sign off, however, you know we have a few questions for you. How are you guys feeling after our little vacation to Hoenn and the start of the first spin-off series? How do you feel about Ash's new place in Team Rocket? How do you feel about Giovanni being more open and hands-on as a mentor? And how do you feel about Meowth finally getting his revenge on Persian and setting the tone for this long-awaited confrontation with the boss rocket himself? Let us know all that and more in the comments below. We also want to give a special shout out to JeganJaze, Shite, Mizuwari, and Tesshii for providing custom art pieces featured throughout the video. And last but certainly not least, a shout out to our patrons and channel members. Eric Dragon, John Sullivan, Genesium, Knuckles0x, Robert Archtegard, Trent Rouse, Vesta Game, Samuel Vivero, Sage Serendipity, PJ9D3, Nomalos Phantom, Jimmy Alexandre, Jamal Hayden, Jacoby Shaner, Infernate Beast 326, Inebriated, Drax, Dominic Wade, Dominique Squad 100, Shannon Roberts, Omar Cousin, Jay Ray, Don Sauce, Normandy 1998, Dreadpool, Narku, Aaron Winters, Knuckles0x again, Pizza 15X, Zach Haji, DJ the Lazy Gamer, and Crimson Manifesto. Thank you all for directly supporting my projects, and if you haven't yet, please consider joining their ranks as it's the best way to do so. With that said, be sure to take care of yourselves and the world around you, and as always, go beyond plus ultra. And we'll see you guys next time.